Today I'm going to show you how to do a silk press on low porosity, coarse, high density hair. As I'm saturating her hair with water before the shampoo, you can see how the beads of water sit on top of her hair, which tells me that her hair is low porosity, and it also could be due to buildup, but in this case, it is just displaying that she has low porosity hair. I also mentioned that she has coarse hair, meaning hair that has a thicker circumference to other hair types. Think angel hair spaghetti versus fettuccine. This hair type tends to be quite strong, however, it does also have a hard time absorbing water, so it is a good idea to try and avoid buildup as much as you can. And also, whenever you're conditioning, you want to deep condition with heat or use a steamer. Water may also take longer to evaporate from this type of hair, so if you can, after you've added your styling products, and I mean this even if you were not doing a silk press, it would be a good idea to sit under a hood dryer for at least 10 minutes to get most of the hair dry, after you've put in your leave-in conditioners, your stylers, or whatever style you plan to do. That way you can have an easier time possibly blow drying it or even wearing it as a twist out. If you're wearing it as a twist out, I would definitely put all your products in and then sit under the dryer for at least 10 minutes. Even if you want to dry it halfway and then let it air dry the rest of the way, I think it's a good idea to get the drying process started with a hood dryer. Most of the time before I shampoo, I like to do a thorough detangling because I don't know what tangles are lurking in the hair before it's shampooed. And shampooing is kind of naturally a tangling process, mainly because you're creating friction. So friction can lead to tangles. I'm not saying that shampooing your hair will tangle your hair, but again, friction can increase tangles. So I don't want to shampoo hair that already has a lot of tangles hidden within it. I always start with a clarifying shampoo, and depending on how much buildup is on the hair, I will shampoo either once or twice with the clarifying shampoo, followed by a color safe or a shampoo that's geared towards silkening the hair. So here I'm using Maria Nila. I really love this shampoo. It helps the hair feel moisturized but not weighed down. I'm doing her deep conditioning with a splash of protein and the Maria Nila conditioner. I mentioned earlier that it's a good idea to use heat when it comes to this hair type, but honestly, you can use heat on any hair type. If the person has high porosity hair, it's also a good idea to use heat, especially before a thermal smoothing process. I would definitely probably use a protein treatment, because usually people who have high porosity hair, they need some gaps to be filled, quote unquote gaps to be filled along their shaft. If you have low porosity hair, technically you need your cuticles to be more open to absorb and receive moisture. So if they were high porosity, I would use a protein treatment followed by a conditioner. If it was low porosity, I would use a deep conditioning and maybe a splash of protein depending on what I'm seeing and feeling. As you saw earlier, I used the Moroccan oil cream and serum for heat protectant. I strongly recommend using heat protectant anytime you use heat, even if it's just a blow dryer, because you want to protect your cuticle layer from cracking from the heat. So always use a heat protectant before you use any type of heat. I think a lot of times people see blow drying as difficult because they simply do not have enough sections and they do not thoroughly detangle each section. So the key to having a really easy blow dry session is to have at least 8 to 12 sections, depending on the density of your hair and honestly depending on your skill, because if you're not highly skilled in blow drying, you probably need smaller sections so you can get through it easier. And also use a comb attachment if you are a beginner. I think round brush and powder brushes are more for professionals, and if you have the skill, great, but if you don't, start with a comb attachment or even consider investing in a rev-air. But no matter what option you use, sectioning your hair and having it thoroughly detangled will keep you from ripping your hair out as you blow dry. If you wanted to cut down on blow drying time, I would actually create very clean sections, at least 8 to 12, have the roots taut, so maybe you can braid it or twist it. Use clamps to have taut roots. That way, when you sit under the hooded dryer for at least 10 to 15 minutes, that's getting your base dry. It's getting a lot of moisture out, and then you can follow that with a blow dryer. No matter what, I always start my blow dryer on medium heat because I don't want to fry the hair while it's soaking wet. So, well, that also means that you need to towel blot your hair very well before you even think about putting heat protectant on it. But I always start with medium heat to get a lot of the moisture out. I would say at least 70% of the moisture out. And then follow that by a few passes with high heat. You can also do something that old school YouTube would call the tension method. So that means you're holding the hair out and moving the blow dryer left and right over your hair without actually touching your hair with the blow dryer. One minor tip that I think is useful for blow drying your hair is I like to actually start in the roots. Hence why I also like to use medium heat, because I think having really wet hair with really hot heat near the roots might not be a great idea. But I think it's good to start at the roots because your ends are the oldest part of your hair. So if you do so many passes over it, you're increasing the opportunity for heat damage. Even though I don't think blow dryers can really cause major heat damage, it's not impossible though. So I would start with medium heat near the root area, get that again 70% dry, and work your way down to the ends because the ends are honestly gonna dry faster anyway. Also, I always do a reverse blow dryer on the roots because that is what is gonna get your scalp completely dry and your roots much straighter. Now we're at everybody's favorite part, the flat iron. And I think that if you do not lay the foundation and do all the steps that I have mentioned beforehand, you will not get great results at this step. You will be frustrated. You'll feel like you have to raise the temperature, and you don't. You shouldn't. I honestly don't suggest going over 410 degrees. On average, I think you can get a good silk press between 390 and 410. And depending on how often you use heat, and if you want to be a straight natural, if you're being very cautious, you can even lower your iron to 370. You can lower it as much as possible. I have a client that we flat ironed her hair on 330 every single time because she and her curls bounce back every single time. Her hair is long, it's beautiful, it's luscious, but we want to maintain the integrity of her hair because she's doing it so frequently. And by frequently, I mean sometimes every 2 weeks, but she does not continuously do this all the time. She definitely takes breaks for wigs. She takes breaks for 2 braids. She alternates her styles so that she's not constantly using heat all the time. You also only need 1 pass, especially if you're trying to reduce heat damage. And also, if you're going to curl your hair after, technically the curling iron kind of counts as another pass, depending on what the temperature is. But you don't want to do more than 1 pass on your hair because, again, it can increase your opportunity for having heat damage. I also noticed that people tend to have finer hair around the front area of their hair. So I do either like to move a little bit quicker along the hairline or reduce the temperature because you don't want that hair to burn because it's not the same texture as the hair in the middle and back. When you're working on the edges, I encourage you to use a wax because not only will the hair lay a little bit better and last longer, but again, it will reduce it from that extra level of heat that usually your edges probably shouldn't have so much of because your edges are typically finer and you don't want to damage that fine, delicate hair along your hairline. Now for some final touches, the trim. So I think trims are definitely necessary, especially if you are not a frequent silk presser. I think that it helps with the flow of the hair. Because honestly, if you don't get a trim, your ends are going to catch amongst themselves and your hair is going to look quite stiff. Her hair still flows actually, but she hasn't had a trim in quite a long time. And by long time, I believe it was over a year. Now, I typically suggest that people get their hair trimmed every 3 to 4 months. This is not set in stone because you got to think about how your hair feels. Are you having a lot of single strand knots? Is it causing extra shedding? You know, those are the factors that will help you know that a trim is necessary. Some people don't like to trim their hair often, and at the end of the day, that's fine. It's your hair. You can do the search and destroy method where you just go through sections of your hair and trim out what you feel needs to be cut. And typically with this method, you're not concerned about your ends looking very sharp and precise, and that's okay too. Everybody has the look that they want. So we came to an agreement on where was good to trim. She said, do what you gotta do. I love when clients say that, but I'm also not too scissor happy in my own opinion. So if you tell me to remove the damage, I'm gonna remove the damage, especially not just what I visually see, but what I feel. And if there's a lot of single strand knots, even though I know they are inevitable, I do think they will contribute to having a healthier head of hair overall. So what do you guys think? I think she looks absolutely fabulous. Of course, she looks fabulous in both her natural hair and her silk pressed hair, but I love the results. And I think when it comes to having straightened hair, you want to reduce heat damage by reducing the amount of times you apply heat. So when I say that, I mean, don't go home and add any heat again. I think maybe if after a couple of days your hair starts to frizz, and we are in Houston, so it's kind of unpredictable, I think it's a good idea to blow dry the hair and put it on a silk roller. That way, not only do you get to straighten the hair out a little bit more, but you also can add curls, and it will set because you've added a little bit of indirect heat to your hair to help it get straighter than it was prior to. So you definitely don't want to damage your hair by adding more heat, but you do want to maintain your curls by using heatless methods like a silk roller. I got my ebook where I detail how to reduce heat damage while you use heat. I have a list of products, I have routines. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you here again soon. Bye.